4% of marriages break up in the first year. 28% of marriages break up between the 5th and 9th year. 36% of divorces happen between 10 and 19 years of marriage. Approximately 1 in 3 divorces in developed regions of the world happens because of sexual dissatisfaction in the relationship. Every 4th couple that has been together for more than 10 years does not engage in sexual activity. This period is exactly when most divorces happen. According to a survey by the Family and Education Research Institute, sexual dissatisfaction is a more significant reason for divorce for women than infidelity. 22% of women view infidelity as a valid reason for divorce, while 32% view sexual dissatisfaction as the reason. How often do couples come to you with sexual issues? I can't say often, because you need to compare it to something else. Most often, of course, women come to us. Couples come with disharmony or right before divorce, and then we also address sexual issues simultaneously. What stages does a couple go through before reaching the point of divorce, and what do they experience at that moment? I would consider each couple individually because the issues are different and the stages of dealing with them are different. But in any case, when a couple is heading toward divorce, it's about letting go of the relationship. It's about loss. And we experience this loss in the same way as any other loss, going through the 5 stages: denial, anger, depression, bargaining, and acceptance. These are the stages a couple goes through before divorce or immediately after, depending on how the psyche reacts to the loss of the relationship. Sometimes we realize the relationship is already over before the legal divorce. Sometimes we only realize it after. What are the consequences of divorces due to sexual problems, and how can it traumatize the couple? Sexual problems certainly traumatize the couple and each participant in it. The person who experiences sexual dysfunction is more deeply traumatized. It's important to gather strength and confidence to work through this issue before entering into new relationships, so as not to fill the void with new relationships. Because when we don't work through it, it's very hard to move forward. We carry that burden with us into new relationships, and it inevitably affects them. The partner who doesn't face dysfunction, but only observes it, can also experience insecurity because, for example, if a man has erectile dysfunction, women often blame themselves for it. Sexual dysfunction is a problem in the sexual sphere, where there is a lack of arousal, desire, or the ability to engage in sexual intercourse. Why do we perceive our partner as sexual? From a physiological standpoint, a partner becomes sexually attractive to us when we have a maximally opposite set of genes. And of course, when we meet someone, we don't literally sniff them, but our body, our subconscious, picks up on this. One of the functions of kissing is to taste and smell, to see if the partner's genes are compatible. When sex disappears from a relationship, it's often blamed on low libido, a monotonous routine, or affairs on the side. As a result, the couple breaks up without ever finding the real reasons and without trying to resolve anything. Let's break it down and see what the possible reasons are and how to find a solution. What happened? My marriage. It seems like my marriage, well, fell apart. Oh no. Why? Because Carl is a lesbian. But you know, I'm not. Even couples who have good relationships can face difficulties in bed. Could this be sexual incompatibility? Then what are the causes? How can we understand, from a physiological standpoint, that people are sexually incompatible, and does sexual incompatibility exist? Sexual incompatibility exists when we are biologically incompatible. And we can understand this quite easily. If the partner's scent doesn't repulse us, then we're probably compatible. If you feel something very unpleasant, repulsive, and don't want to embrace the person, then most likely you are biologically incompatible. Let's move on to the question of physiological and anatomical compatibility and incompatibility. Of course, everyone can have different preferences, volumes, lengths, and so on, but there's always a way to find that approach, those positions, that will feel very pleasant in bed. What you've listed can be compensated, provided the couple doesn't want to break up. Of course, this can be compensated. How to deal with this? If you open Google and type in the concept of sexual temperament or sexual constitution, you might come across a chart that helps determine your sexual constitution. There are 3 types: weak, average, and strong. And of course, our sexual constitution determines how much sexual satisfaction and release we need. It's important to note that sexual constitution is a biologically inherent need for sexual release. That means we can't change it too much. We can increase it a little if necessary, or if influenced by stressors, our desire may decrease. If we take a couple where, for example, the man has a strong sexual constitution, he wants sex every day or several times a day, while the woman wants it once a week, then, unfortunately, the couple is more likely to experience significant difficulties in their relationship, and this could lead to a breakup. And if we do this, such sexual altruism is called, it's important to follow one rule: never force yourself, to ensure it's a non-violent relationship with oneself and sexuality. Because when we force ourselves, it negatively impacts the sexual space in the couple, the erotic space. It's a fragile thing, so we try to protect it, nurture it, and keep adding fuel to the fire. Female sexuality differs from male sexuality. The process of female sexual arousal is based on multi-step stimulation, both psychological, physical, mental, and emotional. A woman's arousal can be very intense and prolonged, but it often happens that a man becomes aroused more quickly, and as a result, only he reaches orgasm. The woman remains unsatisfied but remains silent about it, fearing to hurt the partner. The woman starts avoiding sex, sex disappears completely, and eventually separation occurs. Sexual desire can also fade if there was a bad sexual experience in previous relationships, which we carry into our current relationship. The cause of reduced libido can also be hormonal problems, anxiety disorders, and depressive disorders. In fact, there can be several problems, ranging from physiological to relationship issues. As a specialist, if I see that the issue is physiological, I send them directly to the doctor. If it's in the relationship, we look at whether there is resentment or unresolved issues. The third cause is misunderstanding. Because in a relationship, when there are resentments, they accumulate, and people seem to move further apart with each unresolved issue. And of course, the sexual sphere can no longer be the same. Because sexual contact is depth, it's closeness. And when people distance themselves, of course, there is no closeness. And the third problem is a lack of understanding. A couple may be working on the relationship, talking, discussing, but they have no real understanding of each other. And then each becomes autonomous, and the we system is lost. And of course, this all affects the sexual sphere. So we can identify 3 main reasons for sexual problems in a relationship: physiological, communication breakdown, lack of mutual understanding. What factors decrease libido? To answer this question, it's important to explain the brake and gas system of our sexuality. It's a very simple explanation, but it's very useful for understanding. Imagine that in our brain there's a gas system which is responsible for our sexual desires. And we differ in the speed at which our gas system activates. What does this mean? If the gas system activates very quickly, we need very little to get aroused. If the gas works more slowly, we need more factors for our sexual desire to form. The same applies to the brake system. For some people, it works very quickly, and even a small factor, like a wrinkled blanket, can stop their sexual desire. For others, the brake works more slowly. There could be a hurricane outside, but we still want to love our partner. And answering your question, what factors can influence it? The first is physiology, how comfortable you feel at any given time of day. Are you tired? Are you well rested? Are you sick or not? Then we can consider the environment. For some, the lighting, romantic candles, and music are important. And of course, this needs to be taken into account. If you want to understand more about libido or sexual pleasure, there's a great resource, How Women Want, a book that is very insightful and simple to read. It provides many examples and each reader can find themselves there. You asked about sexual pleasure. What if it decreases and for what reasons? Here I would ask a hypothetical partner, why don't you want to experience pleasure from your partner? What happens between you where you don't want to experience pleasure with them? And we dive into the relationship issues, and when we talk about sex, we can't exclude the moments of sexual openness and freedom.